Yes, greetings in the best of salutation. Today, just want to do a presentation in regards to the commune, or the title is the commune uh, training sessions. And the reason why I call it that is a commune is happens to deal with, of course, something that oh, that people are function cooperatively. Because I've said that adequate cooperation leads to proper communication, and that's how one effectively coordinate his or her power. And in doing so, it takes on a form of shared responsibility, but one must share in their possession, in their responsibility, in their role, in learning how to coexist with one another in the best of ways. And I mean the best, I mean when it comes to the journey to community life is a journey toward human excellence, But in this commune training session, I want to deal with the topic of discussion. It has to do with peer, when it comes to peer pressure and what is meant by peer culture and what is the societal factors contributing to adolescent peer culture and are peer relations necessary for development. In this commune lecture series, we want to report from, or I will be reporting from, what I have written down, what I have studied, and what researched and analyzed and experienced. And hopefully in this session, what will be offered would be conciliatory healing, root cause analysis, conflict resolution, character resolve, and esteem building. Yes. So let's see. And our target audiences, or the target audience, is students of matriculation, ex-offenders as it's called, homeless, neglected, abandoned, rejected, spies, families, business associations, organizations, communities, and nations, addressing social ills and setbacks. The mandate is to cultivate the potential of knowledge that is in us all. As we continue to promote the value of self-worth, communicating with precision and clearer image to the world through 5 channels of communication, we offer mature solutions to immature problems. Hopefully this commune training session will do that. And by way of the maturation process. And the maturation process consists of 5 components, 5.5, maybe understanding, tolerance, temperament, confidence, and respect. And the results of the understanding is to restore social credibility. The results of tolerance is to readdress social diversity. And the third is the temperance slash temperament to revive social coherency, the results. And the fourth is to confidence is to replenish social continuity, and the respect is to reclaim social solidarity. Yes. And the common humanity mission way for change is a product of human effort, and that human effort must be synthesized, to the highest pieces, higher level of interaction, higher level of we use the word awareness, consciousness, and that's going to take some growth and development. And that growth and development is actually that growth and the connection of the growth. It responds to a structural development. So how things are structured in your life. Yes. So yes. So but needless to say, man, I going to proceed on in this wise, and want to talk about too in regards to when it comes to like peer pressure. What is peer culture, social, societal factors? Peer is peer relations necessary for development. This is the article that was written, and that deals with analytic peer culture, what they call game adolescent peer culture, parents' role. Yes. So written by Helen Bateman. But we also want to deal with optimal, effective communication and realize that we must be here for each other. And when I think of optimum, effective communication, we must protect and defend our integrity. And the weapon we use is dignity, doing so the benevolent way. In the words of Dr. Francis Wells said, for people that don't respect themselves, they won't protect themselves. I'm here for you. We must be here for one another, or there for each other. And the call is to come back to community life, and community life is a journey to our original human excellence of dignity and nobility. Key to social life is family. And those who participate in that activity will find joy, and those who don't will find joy in misery. Joy is the happiness that you feel on one of the pursuit of one's potential. Adolescent. A behavior which there is no connection, there is no growth. The growth responds to structural development. How one structure his or her life, because people are a government within themselves, how they govern their lives, that their feelings, their thoughts, their attitudes, and the language, the words that they speak within their actions or slash activity. And that's what people represent, humans represent, their senses. And adolescent peer culture. The writer talks about, when he talks about games, how certain ethnic groups they socially interact with one another based upon what is a term called race, which is conceptual, not factual. idea, because the best body of knowledge is creation. And, nothing dogmatic about creation. It, it exists, and all that has been created is it complements one another. It's complementary, very beautiful. But if we look at certain schools, when it comes to learning, and people, the term called, you be close to the teacher pet, and how even in the academic field, man, I'm getting into it. Well, I'm not reading, I'm just getting into it for what I've, as I said, researched, analyzed and studied and experienced myself. And yes, and it's amazing of how the glory is not in the academia, being academically inclined. The glory is in the athletics, athletics. And you get women as well. And so you get the attention, and you find your place of belonging. You seem as though that you belong. You find value in yourself. But this article says that games pose a serious problem for many schools. Students at schools with gangs are more than twice as likely to be victims of violent crimes. See, I've learned that violence is the result of an unresolved status. Here we go. Status. Yes. And he or she who can determines the relationships one with another, determines when the relationships are established, then one who can control it determines the status of that relationship at the expense of making one feel inferior while the other making one feel inferior while the other is superior. So one is falsely changed, a false charge, false claims. Yes. And it's very superficial, very superficial. That's the misinterpretation and the wrong attitude about self as well as creation. In our thinking, because remember I said that people in the growth process, people just responding to a structural development. How the structure has been developed. Yes. And that's like even how you structure the growth and development of logic, reason. You know what I'm saying? Or even your emotions, they just correspond. If they don't merge or they're not balanced and they're measured up, then there creates a imbalance. So then therefore one act out these imbalances in their lives, Yeah. So, students, violent crimes, and then students at schools without gangs, they report greater access to illegal drugs. They're trying to find a place of belonging, And they are 4 times more likely to report seeing a student with a gun in school. Gangs generate an atmosphere of fear, intimidation that pervades the school environment. People are responding also to the extent of the injury that has been done to his or her humanity. Structure, how things are structured in their life, corresponding growth is corresponding. If there is a undevelopment and then growth, then the structural development is a underdevelopment, and that's very undermining to human existence when it comes to growth and development. And people become accustomed to that too. So this intimidation tactics, and you can a person that is young, person that is in school, they could find him or herself to be intimidated even by learning. Could be intimidated by learning, and it could be intimidated if he has not found this place of belonging of self-assurance about what he wants to do in life by others who are maybe getting the glory, maybe the athletic field, or even um, in the field of participating in what is called gang activity. You know? Yes, it is a grouping, you know, and of course we look at race, class, gender, religion, economics, politics, or whatever, and how people associate with themselves. But the only thing that you can represent is your senses. Keep and that which needs to be strengthened is one's resolve, and I call it character resolve because that's the issue. Issue is character resolve. Yes. So intimidation. Fear. And I say there's three types of fears: physical fear, intellectual fear, and emotional fear. And I know people have an acronym for fear, false evidence appearing to be real. So if one doesn't want to, has a problem of fear in dealing with this reality, because he or she has not come to the realization of valuing his own self and his own existence and accepting himself, and then therefore they will reach outside of themselves because circumstances makes stuff that's ourselves. So it's deception, it's deceit. They are being deceived, and maybe they could be deceiving themselves. People can think more highly of themselves. Humans are, then they all too humans are very generally superficial and faulty in a lot of their notions. They think about creation, how long it's been here. The humans, if we were fully developed at the max, and we can do a much better job of coexisting and living with one another in an egalitarian way. Yes. So, but yeah, in the imitation that pervades the school environment, the learning environment. I think Dr. Du Bois said this one time. He says he didn't go to Harvard because of the better teachers. He went there because of the environment was conducive for learning. So we're dealing with peer culture. Yes, and the societal factors contributing to adolescent peer culture. Environment key. And if you're living in a not so good environment, but then you may have parents who may live in a instead of an urban area or a rural area. You take your children out to the rural area, and the environment change. They see themselves change. They change. Their attitude change. So they just be once again corresponding to the structural development of that particular environment. Oh, but not, that's not saying anything uh, extravagant or elaborate. I don't know what word to use. I think that stuff can be pretty clear. So, but then the article goes on to say about adolescent peer culture and parents' role. I would say the best profession is a parent, but the pivotal role in parents play in the child's life, because children learn in picture form. Picture form becomes a meaning. That meaning becomes an emotion, and it's acted upon. Children's development, a child's development, it says it's undisputed chance. The role that parents play is undisputed. You have to get involved in children's life, in their schooling, their education, and you must get into their lives and not overlook and neglect them when it comes to when you are even in the home. Sit at the table with them, eat with them, talk to them, relate them at a level where there is an environment of trust rather than distrust. It says parents. I know it says two, instead of one. There's two, plural. But we all have to play our part and play our role as a community in the proper supervision that is needed to help the young folks who consider themselves under this peer, how things appear, or you're peering out, you know. And vision stems from the source of your thinking. What they I think Dr. Boyd said that about 16 he couldn't talk to someone and somebody he couldn't feel some kind of way that at 16 they didn't know what they want to do with their life. I'm around about that age, you know what I'm saying? Maybe off, but it's around about that age. And these have to do with, as I said earlier, societal factors play a role in peer culture, in the structural development play a role. So what a person wants to do, and the involvement, the undisputed chance is the involvement that the parents play in the development of what? Of children's life. Researchers have shown that differences in parenting practices can have a profound, lasting effects on all aspects of development. Cognitive, social, these development. Now they talk about the cognitive development. Their retention, as well as their attention span. You know, you can be in a certain circumstances, and those circumstances may not be, you know, the best circumstance, because I say you can best diagnose anyone by the condition of the circumstance which they come out of, but the circumstances in which they are in, the situation should not overwhelm them. That's just temporary. It's temporary. So some of the ways you can do it is, you know, we help them to take them to expose them. Exposure is a way to do it, to different ways of thinking, different cultures, if I may use that language, different cultures. Diversify them, as I said, diversify their thinking. But the grounding and the basis of that is the pivotal role that parents play in their child's development at the home. And that's an investment. That's an investment. It's business. It's business. Yes. And the lasting effects, you know, the residuals of it, the cognitive and the social and the physical. The physical can play a part because people can get mentally dejected, intimidated by assignments that has been given to them. And they need the tutoring that they get. I can recall I was a part of a children at risk program, youth at risk. And father had some challenges. He wasn't around. Something, I don't know what cured him. Child wasn't valid initiative program. And I was there, and as I filled a role that the father was not there, and I saw that child maybe 5, 10 years later. I mean, he ran up to me, man, and never forgot that I spent time with him and going to the library and even having a sitting down and eat with him. We ordered, you know, in this society, pizza, and he never forgot that. And his mother was like really surprised that he would run up to me and share that with me. I don't know if she was surprised. I don't know why she was surprised, you know, but I don't know if that, you know, the intricacies of how I came in contact with the brother, with the young fella, but he never forgot that. You never forgot that. And I was kind of taken by surprise because, I just did it because it was some money involved, of course. But I know that it was just the right thing to do. Yes. So that physical and emotional. Yeah, we did that emotional part. Differences in parenting style. Remember, the emotional part of the parent themselves in their style, in the physical presence. For example, you can spend more time somewhere else instead of the physical quality time with your child. They can feel some kind of way that someone else will feel that void. And then the social, because the social interactions skills, and then the cognitive, what that which is going on in their brain and their mind, if I may use that. Yeah, use like the cog in the wheel. It is the initiation to get the brain thinking and the motor, spark, bam, spark, the engine stops. Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, yes, in the difference in the myriad of outcomes, such as academic achievement and self-esteem, and defiant behavior. Now, let's look at this here. What is meant by peer culture? The term peer culture is introduced, is said by a brother by the name of William Corcio, was derived through Corcio's study of children in nursery settings. A nursery school. We look at a word, a nurse, and a nurse, is there to give care to the patient. Care to the patient, but the key word is to give attention to. Because children give attention to your patience with it. I think we need to make a note of that. That children give attention to your patience with them, because it reflects on them in their growth and development. Yes, they do. And if you are impatient with them, then they start to feel some kind of way. Then they take on a burden and a responsibility that that could be too much for them to bear, and then therefore they need relief from that. Some could participate in promiscuity or participate in drugs, so get interactive with gangs, and some find a way to release that through some channel it through academics. Some, it's always exceptions to the rules. Some channel through athletic field, and some do it on a continued basis, but at the same time, some get a little older, and those habits that through parents a role in their relationship or not, and in the later years, it will show up. And the strength is in the individual personally. The strength is in the individual to, with the proper guidance and the proper support, physically, emotionally, financially, from others, to help compensate for that. Then the individual, him or herself, starts taking on the responsibility for him or herself and his or her life. Yeah, no question about it. So yeah, settings contains the following aspects of social interactions. Yes, your social interaction skills, how we interact and engage in one another. Children in these settings appear to adhere and behave. This is based upon nursery school children. And remember, I said they're paying attention to your patients. how you are patient with them, and behave according to a set of social rules. This behavior routines and behavior routines. If such rules and routines are breached like a contract, which means there are rules and behavior routines that are practiced. Remember, children, people are responding to the extent of the injury that has been done to his or her humanity, and they are the growth of anyone is responding to this, to structural development, to the how they structure and govern their lives, how they structure and govern what they see, what they hear, and that requires some discipline, how they govern their lives, how their lives are being governed. Yes. If such rules and routines are breached, then comments and negotiation between children will follow. People start to talk, but you see that he's a little different. Something must be wrong. Because this is the observation that people are giving to when they see, organizational behavior, how people interact with one another. Because people can make a mistake, as one ethnic group did, saying no name. They thought that people were more that wealth was important to them, and it wasn't. What was important was their self-determination, how they shared their responsibility, used their shared possessions and their shared responsibilities to continue to foster the manner in a way in which they learn how to communicate and coexist with one another in the best of ways, where they would see that which is most important, that which is greater value, as they learn to live in harmony with one another. And humans make that adjustment. The challenge is that someone wants you to live in harmony to their set of standards, to their set of rules, even in the way that they think. And remember, we're perfect in our own uniqueness. So humans will naturally resist that, because they know that there is something not right with that if it's not done squarely and fairly. Hope that makes sense. So then, second, children in these settings share a mutual understanding of actions and norms for procedures to follow the procedure, which means really how people proceed, how people go about doing things. People follow that. And people may do things a certain way. That does not mean that's the way you do it, because I found out that people argue over methodology, but the principle stays the same. So we must be principle driven, And anybody being induced with meth or a drug, and people are benefiting from that financial and doing a litmus test. It's like they're weaning you off. It's the objective of weaning you off, so that we don't, that you don't become so dependent on it. That one must really get in touch with his or herself, his or her own nature, and nothing outside of that should come in and disrupt that. There are those who will say that some things that one could use to help you well, if that works for them, then there's nothing that I could say about that. I just could say more power to you. So yes, this shared framework of understanding enables children to systematically interpret novel situations. Yes. So we're talking about how people follow these norms, and people can make something to be, novel when it's not. It may work for them, because people say there is an absolute, use the term good and evil, but that's just satisfies one's intellect. That's all. That's all. That's what it is. That's the set standards that someone else that comes up with. But we need to learn to continue to reason with progression. Children watching that, how we reason, instead of with progression, we reason with regression. We want to move forward. That's the objective, to move forward. So children in these settings engage in activities that focus on themes, the themes, that which is central, that which is important, that which is primary, essential. It is a locale, but they're trying to locate something, and that which they are able to locate is that which they are able to identify with. Yes, and that which they are able to identify with, they look at others and see how they identify with certain things, such as the glory that people get in sports, and the women that people get, and the men, or vice versa, whatever this, the glory in that, and overlook the importance of academia. Yes. And it becomes repeated, and all members of the peer group recognize. They recognize. So yeah, I'm going to cut this short, but I'm going to read one more aspect of what is meant by peer culture. Caruso also examine relationships between social systems by children in the culture of adults. Because I always say that children are being hunted by the adult, and the adult are being hunted by their children, which means the adult is still hunted by their past childhood experiences. Yes. Namely, teachers and parents, their role, how they interact with one another. Yes, children see that. Caruso suggested that that there was a dynamic interchange of elements between the two cultures. The youth, I mean the adolescent, or the peer culture, and the adults. The dynamics, because one thing, as Dr. Sismo said about culture is dynamic. It changes, and when it doesn't, you must compensate for it. And if you don't compensate for it, remember, people the growth of anyone is responding to structural development, and people are responding to the extent the injury has been done to his or her humanity. And what I mean by that is not if we have to take a very serious look at anything when it becomes destructive, whatever it may be, politics, culture, religion. Take a very serious look at it, because it grows. It grows. A human is just a living organism. It's always evolving, always growing. And even in the language, because for me, language is an aspect of one's behavior. Lang, it's have to do with longitude, and have to do with how you gauge one's level of maturity. Yes. So interchange of elements between two cultures. Culture is defined by the totality of people, thought, and practice, if I may use that definition. When elements that appear in one culture reappearing in another. There are certain cultural traits that people may not like of others, but needs to say they may be in denial that those cultural traits that you don't like in others, it is also in yourself. That's a true deal. But we got to be mature about this thing, man. We really do. We really got to be mature about it. So in 1994, Corso and Donna Elder discussed how these interchange between cultures is particularly interesting in adolescent, during which the adolescent peer group culture, while maintaining its own unique social system. The interchanging, the interaction of the peer culture in the adolescent. Now, don't think that adult. Don't think that the adult is not dealing with peer pressure. Don't think that they are not in competition with one another. Don't think that they are not in odds with one another. Huh? Because we can agree on the surface, but beneath the surface, we're at odds with one another. But this interchanging, this interaction, while trying to maintain his own social system and not allowing anything to be introduced or influence the social system, the way of life in which one has obtained and living by. There's a, it's like there's a certain group of people who were wanted to help their own ethnic group, and they distanced themselves from them because there was newfound status and newfound gains that they have made, and they didn't want the others to mess up the status or their newfound gains that they have made. They didn't want that. So then the response the response by the two, the ones that were here, newfound gains, and the newly arrival ones, let's put it that way, that came over here, it created some form of discontent. It could lead to, and I'm using an example, I'm not saying that's the case, but it could lead to some type of animosity. You could start feel as I stated earlier, target audiences of, you can start feel you're neglected, you can feel that you're abandoned, rejected, and despised. You know what I'm saying? You can start to feel that way. You can start to feel your way and feel a certain way in a culture where that people are more celebrated than you, based upon their wealth, their status, and their newfound notoriety. You could feel some kind of way. So you can, find your way to be suffering from illusions of grandeur. So you would do things to elaborately construct yourself, like, who is Superman? There's no such thing. Elaborately construct yourself to be something that it's not. But that comes out of the minds of minds. And then you can participate in activities such as violence and so forth and so on. Because I realize that there's a deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and insecurities that people have about themselves, and they try to compensate for that, the best way that they can. Not to necessarily mean participate in acts of violence, but it also be used to drugs and intoxicants. And even a sadist, and I don't come up with these terms, you know what I'm saying? But the thing is that he becomes very sexually aggressive, but it represents a sense of instability in everything that he does. He takes pleasure in inflicting harm or pain. That's bad, because the pain has been inflicted on me. It was corresponding. They were just responding and reacting to the extent of the injury that has been done to his or her humanity. I know I use this in 3 different ways in structural development. It pertains to the growth and structural development. I use corresponding, responding, and reacting. But yeah, so one was to maintain its unique social system, but realize, that social system that you maintain that you say is unique, is really ain't all that unique at all. The only thing is unique is human beings and their DNA. We're perfect in our own uniqueness. But we say that the social system, and how arrogant of you. That's really a sign of arrogance. It really is. That's why I say the very culture or the very thing that we say that we are against in certain traits, is the very traits that many of us have. It's just challenging. So introduce the rules and systems that facilitate belonging, in an adult society. So then people start to facilitate this way of life. Call it, I like to say it's judicially reinforcing. It's done in the education system as well. And this is how you find your belonging. If you look at certain cultures, ethnic groups, how some would have a lot of money, and then they would say this is the way you go about doing it. And then you start to say, well, man, I don't separate myself from people, man, because I got a certain, I'm a part of a different class, I'm a part of a different group, and they arrogantly say it, arrogantly, you know what I'm saying? And people think that's the way to go. People think some people can think that's the model. Those who are, can be stimulated by that, because one thing I realized about, stimulation is that you can be stimulated to do something without conscious thought behind it. And that's the challenge. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being stimulated, really. I when I first talked about it, I thought that it was just a term itself, but to be stimulated with no conscious thought behind it, that means that you are not aware. Yeah. Now, because the first step to change is awareness, change is a product of human effort. And we live in a society where people can channel even your awareness. That's very sophisticated. It's very, and it becomes, it's be a part of this monolithic structure, if I may use that. It's like there's only one way. It's only one way. It's only one way. Yeah. There is one way for you. There's one way for everybody. And that's the fallopian tube. That's the way. It's the way we came out. Yeah, that's the way we came out. That was for you. It's for me, for anybody else. It's come through our mother. That's the way. And that's why we're perfect in our own uniqueness. Yeah. That's a beautiful thing, ain't it, man? Yeah. So other researchers have shared this view in a distinct adolescent peer culture with its own structure. Yes. Where structure again support for this view of adolescent peer culture comes from a variety of resources. Yes. When it comes to, I'm gonna stop right there. When it comes to peer culture, I started off with a little bit about gangs and parents' role. The undisputed, and I talked a little bit about societal contributing factors, just a little bit. The undisputed chant is the role that the parent plays in the child's life, the growth, and how parents structure his or her life around the child, his or her relationships with others, his or her academic achievement, his or her religious commitment. He's an institution because the family itself is an institution. Home is an institution. Church, home, government, and school. These are the words that Reverend James Bevel shared with me. He said God loves church, home, government, school, institution. Now don't go berserk on when I use church. Because don't think that didn't play a part in structuring the development and the grounding or adding to the groundwork and helping people better their lives. And when it comes to their interacting with one another as a family unit, as a family structure, yeah, it played a role. Not to mention any religious institution, the masjid, the mosque, the temple, or the synagogue. Role that it played in helping to give structure to the lives of the adults, adding to give structure to the lives of adults as well as to the children. Community plays a role. Government plays a role. Business plays a role. And culture. Maybe learn to diversify the tension that we have with one another and get to draw us off the goal. As Brother Bilal would say, get the pus out the bump. Commune training session. Shared our possessions, coexisting, sharing our responsibilities. One for another. For the development of our intellect. For the betterment of humanity. Till next time, talk to you.